would you consider all false religions that you think are wrong forms of spiritual abuse?
That's a good question. Not all false religions, no.
Okay.
But the ones that come out of Christianity, yes. So in other words, the religions that, like they start within Christianity,
Okay.
and then the next thing you know, they like the leaders from whatever group, now they're kind of leading their own cult out of that. Absolutely, that's spiritual abuse, right? And you find that, and these are the extreme versions, right, where of spiritual abuse, where you have a leader and they've basically created a cult that's for them, and the spiritual abuse looks like so. Number one, they're the unquestioned leader; no one can question them. They're God's man, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're God's voice. Whatever they say is basically from God. So when they ask for all of your money, you better give them all your money.
Yeah.
Right? When they say, the Lord told me that I need to sleep with everyone's wives, then that's what you've got to do. Right? Like that is spiritual abuse to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so those are definitely the extreme examples of it.
I feel like we're talking about some of the same stuff.
Yeah, we are.
This is an overlap topic.
It is.
With a lot of other things that we've already talked about.
It very much so.
Okay.
Very much so.
Well, just so everyone knows.
Yeah. Yeah, and
talking about the same thing.
Stuff. Yeah, but it's connecting a lot of these things together under one umbrella, right?
Yeah.
So it's taking a lot of the things we've talked about, like with false religions or cults and, legalism, and bringing it kind of all together under an umbrella of spiritual abuse when those things are specifically used and manipulated by leaders.
I hadn't really heard of this term.
Yeah.
Before.
Okay. Okay.
And then Courtney brought it up.
I gotcha.
And was like, you guys should talk about that. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
I didn't realize there was an umbrella term.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very much so.
Or that it was commonly used or whatever.
It's definitely commonly used. It's become more commonly used.
Yeah.
Within I think especially within the evangelical circle.
It's just a good way to umbrella everything.
It is.
Okay.
It is. And hitting a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
And so because it goes from the Pentecostal charismatic camps to the real legalistic camps, right? Like we've talked about before, where you get spiritual abuse, for example, what we kind of came out and discovered in regards to the Duggars, the 16 kids and counting or whatever,
and everyone was abusing each other.
Or 19.
Now there's 48 of them.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, the more of the spiritual abuse was very much controlling. It was very controlled.
Oh, those people.
Very manipulative.
We watched the documentary about those people, I think.
Yeah, it's very controlled, very manipulative, right?
Yeah.
And it was coming.
And some of the kids tried to go do it themselves, right?
Yeah, and
start their own thing.
Well, some of the kids left and said, see you later. We're out. Yeah. As they got old enough, got married. Yeah. And so...
the footage is creepy.
What's that?
Even of them just hanging out and being around each other is weird.
Yeah, and so there's just a lot of issues going on, right? And I think that so you got that stems from that really legalistic, controlling. You hear phrases like spiritual umbrella, you've got to stay under the spiritual covering,
right? That
yeah, and that's part of the spiritual abuse as well.
Yes,
yeah.
That was in that documentary. They were in that documentary about the booklets and stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah, I can't either. Yeah.
Okay, so why back to the topic.
Yeah, sure.
Why aren't false religions spiritual abuse, but cults are? Why are you making that distinction?
Okay. Because not all false religion involves spiritual abuse per se. So, for example,
I asked the question because wouldn't the existence of it be spiritual abuse?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
If this religion's keeping me from what you think is the real religion, then
right?
Is that not spiritual abuse?
Okay, I see what you're saying in that sense. Then yes, if we're going to put it in those terms.
Okay.
I was just thinking of it more of
you're thinking about are these leaders being abusive?
Right.
For control.
Right.
Or are they letting me?
Correct.
Okay.
I was thinking it in that sense.
Okay.
Right. Where if I'm a Hindi right?
Yeah.
And I'm in within Hinduism. Yes, you can, because you can find spiritual abuse in any camp,
Yeah.
or any other religion. But just because the religion exists doesn't necessarily mean abuse is existing with it.
Okay.
But yes, but in the way you phrased it, obviously I would say it's false. It's not true.
Right.
Therefore, it's leading someone away from Christ, not toward Christ. So yes, I'd have an issue with it, but I don't know if I'd go as far as to say like abuse.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty strong word.
They're not intentionally doing
Correct,
that.
'cause they
just
think they're-
all believe something else.
Right, because they
Okay.
think that they're doing the right thing by them.
Okay.
Right, so
Okay.
yeah.
All right. This term is too umbrella. And
Yeah.
I was way out at the end of the umbrella.
Yeah, it's definitely a large. A lot of things kind of can fall under it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, it's been used more and more commonly in especially the evangelical circle, where there's been the big deconstruction movement.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's been a kickback against perceived spiritual abuse.
In all of its glorious forms.
Yeah, and from the like when we talk about with the Duggars, like that very controlling spiritual covering thing, to the purity culture, to that in the evangelical world with Joshua Harris, to the Pentecostal charismatic, don't touch the Lord's anointed. This is what the Lord says. Kind of all those things could you find spiritual abuse, I think, in all levels of those. So,
Okay.
yeah.